For social studies, we are going to dive into Addy's Surprise, a Christmas story. Before we begin, I want you to know that you must annotate throughout the whole chapter. You will have to create one notice, one thing that you notice, and one thing that you wonder. You also will have to write down the most important part, the who and the what. You have to create one question and two codes of your choice. If you cannot remember that, I wrote the instructions down for you in the document. Follow along as I read. Feel free to pause at any time to take notes. I want you to know that I'm not going to read this entire chapter to you. I will read the first couple of pages, and when you hear me stop, you will have to proceed on your own and make sure you annotate throughout the entire thing. One thing that I want you to think about during the whole chapter is I want you to think about in which ways did the author prove or show that Addy and her mama still face some difficulties after slavery. So now they're free in Philadelphia, but for some reason, Addy and mama still, they don't have everything that they need. I want you to think about the ways in which Addy and mama are still struggling, because you will have to use those details to answer your Sandco for Rewind. All right, so let's begin. Addy's Surprise, a Christmas story. Table of contents. You know that the table of contents is used to find a specific chapter and its page number. Chapter 1, Winds of Winter. Addy knew that winter had come to Philadelphia even before she opened her eyes. An icy wind whistled through the crack in the garret window. Mama had just gotten up, letting a puff of cold air in the bed when she lifted the heavy quilts. But her place was still warm, so Addy snuggled into it. Mama's gentle voice called to her. Addy, honey, I need your help over here. Snow's coming right in through the window. Addy peeked out from under the quilt in the dim gray light of morning. She saw Mama straining to close the window. Its panes were white with frost. A little pile of snow had built up on the windowsill, and more snow had blown across the floor. I'm coming, Mama, she said. Addy crawled out of bed and shivered over to the window to help Mama. Together they pulled down on the window, struggling to close it, but the window wouldn't budge. Go get them rags next to the stove, Mama said. Addy got the rags and returned to Mama. Help me stuff these in the crack, Addy, said Mama as she poked the rags between the window and the sill. Stuff them good. They all we got to keep the wind from coming in. Addy put one cold foot on top of the other to try to warm her feet. Can't we light the stove this morning, Mama? She asked. It's cold, so cold in here. No, honey, Mama said. We got just enough coal to last us the week if we use it only for cooking supper. She smiled at Addy and gave her a quick warm hug. Now you wash up and get ready for school and hustle, you hear me? You hear? Then you won't feel the cold so bad. Addy splashed icy cold water from the basin window over her face and dressed quickly, dancing around in her stocking feet. She waited to pull on her boots until the very end. They were still wet from the puddle, and she stepped in on her way home from school yesterday. Though she had set them by the stove last night, the fire hadn't been warm long enough to dry them out. Addy wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and sat down at the table to eat the cornbread Mama had set out for her. She crumbled it in a bowl and poured buttermilk over it. As she ate, she spied a pile of fabric folded neatly on Mama's chair with a spool of thread and a pair of scissors on top. You was up late again sewing, Mama, wasn't you? Asked Addy. I got to finish this dress for Mrs. Howell, answered Mama. Mrs. Ford say Mrs. Howell is real particular. Mama unfolded the fabric and squinted at one of the seams she had sewn last night. It's hard to see my stitches by candlelight. We sure do need a lamp. How much we've got for it? Asked Addy. Can I count up the money in the milk bottle again? Mama nodded. Sure you can, she said. But I ain't put nothing in since you counted it last week. I put my tips in last Saturday, Mama, Addie said proudly. I got two big tips when I delivered them dresses to Society Hill for Mrs. Ford. That's good, Addie, said Mama. She reached into their hiding place behind the stove, picked up the milk bottle, and handed it to Addie. Addie turned the bottle upside down and shook it so that the coins poured out. Then she carefully counted. Then she carefully counted the pennies, half dimes, and dimes. We've got $1.57, announced Addie. Well, that ain't enough for a lamp, said Mama. Guess we're gonna have to wait a little longer. Just hope I don't have to pull them stitches out of one of them seams in that dress. Addie finished her breakfast and washed her bowl and spoon in the bucket of water that stood by the stove. Then she sat back down so Mama could brush and braid her hair. Could brush and braid her hair. She looked at the thick folds of green and red plaid taffeta that lay over the chair next to her. Them rich girls sure got pretty dresses, said Addie. Sure do, said Mama. Isabella Howe's gonna wear that one to some fancy Christmas party. Remember last Christmas, Mama? Asked Addie. She thought back to her last year. She thought back to last year when she and Mama were on the plantation with Papa. Her brother Sam and baby Esther, Master Stevens gave us a real skinny chicken. Sam wouldn't even eat it after you cooked it. He was mad because of how hard we worked. He said one chicken couldn't make up for a whole year of work. But I was hungry and I ate it. I remember, Mama said. But Sam ate my sweet potato pudding. He liked that. And Papa did too, Addie said. Sweet potato pudding was Papa's favorite. He always said so. He always Addie stopped. She and Mama did not even know where Papa and Sam were. And they had to leave baby Esther behind when they ran away from the plantation. She missed Papa and Sam and Esther so much. Mama seemed to know that what Addie was feeling. As she started to braid Addie's hair, she said, I'm going to make that pudding for Christmas again this year. We'll take it to the church dinner. Auntie Lula taught me to make it. I'm sure she's going to be making it this year too. So when we have Christmas dinner, we'll be eating the same thing as Auntie Lula, Uncle Solomon, and Esther. I wonder what Esther's Christmas is going to be like, worried Addie. Well, Auntie Lula and Uncle Solomon ain't going to have to work on Christmas, so they can be with her all day long, said Mama. She finished Addie's first braid and started on the second one. Addie, you left your doll, Janie, with her. That's like Esther having a present to play with every day. Last night I dreamed we all was all together. Sam, Papa, Esther, all of us here in Philadelphia, said Addie. She turned her head to look at Mama, who looked sad. Mama gently turned Addie's head back and continued braiding. Okay, so I'm going to stop on page 7. You are going to read the rest of the chapter by yourself. While you read, as you read the chapter, I want you to annotate. I want you to think about the important parts that are happening. I want you to think about how the authors show that Mom and Addie are still facing some type of difficulties or struggle, even though they are free in Philadelphia. And once you finish the chapter, you can get started on your Sankofa Rewind. Mm-mm. I'll copy the rest of the. I'll a link onto the rest of the chapter so that you can actually navigate it yourself. So once this one is finished, you actually can click on the next link to continue reading.